All right, everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we're going to be talking about 4 fixes I have that could help the Zeta economy in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. Zetas are becoming a problem for a lot of the player base, and it's even creeping into people who are in that end game, who are in those latter stages. And this bottleneck is something that I think was always kind of like underneath the surface. I think it's been exacerbated by players buying Lightspeed bundles, which again is something that we've all kind of just come to know and come to recognize is an issue. But I think when we look at this game, it's always been there. Like, I can tell you, I remember years ago, I fought somebody in GAC. They had way more relics than me and about half as many Zetas. And the guy, he literally said, he goes, yeah, they're basically the only thing I can't buy. They're the only thing I can't whale on. And that concept is still the same today, where it's very challenging even to whale on them. So this video, we're going to be talking through some fixes that I think could help, that I hope CG would potentially implement, and even just get the conversation going to see what you guys think about this stuff. So with that said, like, subscribe, comment down below. Let's give a huge shout out to our channel members, as always, for their continued support. If you guys are ever interested, that link is below, along with a link to our Discord server. That's the most important thing. The Discord's awesome. Go check it out, guys. A lot of cool conversations going on there. Really can't thank you all enough for just, continuing to keep the faith in me to bring you content on this game. I am honored and blessed to be in the position I am, so I appreciate all of you. But let's get in here and let's talk about some Zetas. All right, folks. So I'm going to be presenting 4 fixes, right? 4. 2 of them will be for players who spend money, and 2 of them will be centered around the free-to-play community. So let's start with the first way I have for those who spend money. The first way is, excuse me, my dog just almost broke my screen door. One sec. Okay, chill out, Bubba. I don't know if you guys could hear him slam into that glass door there, but holy crap. So anyway, the first way would be Lightspeed Bundle 2.0. So in the store, what they would do is if you were to purchase, say, if I go back to the Lightspeed bundles that I've purchased, like the Dr. Aphra one, what they would do is release a pack that says, hey, much like the Lightspeed bundle you purchased, where we took this character to this specific relic level, this gear level, this star level, we're going to do the same thing with Zetas, where you bought the Aphra bundle, it now unlocks this other pack that will sell you the Zetas that you're missing for whatever price point they deem necessary. Again, we always talk about this game is about resource management. It's about balancing your stuff. And one of the problems that players who bought Lightspeed bundles have begun to realize is that they didn't balance their spending. You spent all this money on your Lightspeed bundles, but you didn't go and buy the Zetas that you're missing, so now you're in this huge crunch. I think if they did a kind of 2.0 for Lightspeed bundles, it could be really solid, and I think would give players that motivation to say, hey, you know what? I did spend on this. Maybe I should also buy the Zetas that go along with said bundle. Again, I think your price point there could be a little bit lower, and we'll talk about this again in another fix I have, but CG roughly rates Zetas at, I think, a $20 per mat price point. I don't think there's any packs in the game right now that are selling them, but I think they normally value them at, when they sell them, it's roughly about $20 for a full Zeta, or $1 per mat. If you're selling them for just a specific unit, though, I think you could reduce that price point, because if you think about Zetas like this, let me go to my Imperial Remnants here as an example. If you told me, hey, Phil, I'm going to give you Stormtrooper Zeta, I'd be happy, right? Whatever. I'd take a free Zeta. I'm never going to say no to a Zeta. But if you told me, hey, I'm going to give you 20 mats, are you going to spend it on Stormtrooper? The answer is no. I'm going to go put that on one of my pirate units. So the mat is much more valuable because you get to put it wherever you want. So I think with a specific Zeta like the Lightspeed Bundle 2.0, those packs could be, they don't need to be this crazy valuation, because it's only, again, the Zetas for that character. So think about your OG Bad Batch. If you don't have the Zetas on your OG Bad Batch, how much is that worth to you if it's something that maybe you aren't going to use as much, right? So there's just, again, I think that would be a good way for players who would be interested in spending that money without completely ruining everything. And again, it would be gated behind you having purchased that bundle. So if I was to go in and just upgrade my scoundrels like Cara Dune and IG-11 and Queel, I don't all of a sudden get access to that Mandalorian 2.0 Lightspeed bundle. I would need to buy the Lightspeed bundle first, and then I'd get access to the Zeta pack. And again, it's not going to give you mats for ones you'd already have. So that, to me, is step number 1, right? Step number 2 is accelerate Zetas. This is for the free-to-play, side of things, right? Accelerate Zetas. Now, what I'm not talking about here is, hey, double the amount of Zetas you get in fleet, in the fleet store, right? Make these 2 Zetas or make this 1,000. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about going into your fleet challenges and instead of awarding you 1 Zeta, now it's going to award you 2. I'm not talking about it like that. Very similar to character shards, after a character has been in the game for a certain period of time, that Zeta goes from being, say, a 20, the whole cost, if we go to Enoch, whose character shards were just accelerated, his Zetas now go from 20, and, maybe I'll go to one of my smugglers who needs it because they've been in the game, like Han and Kira here. Hey, this goes from 20 down to 10. This goes from 13 to 7. This goes from 30 to 15, just for the sake of argument, right? They've been around for that long. I think by doing that, right, hey, we're going to reduce the amount of Zetas you need on the older characters. It gives players the opportunity to catch up, because one of the biggest problems is the players who really need Zetas, they can't keep up. They can't catch up to me. There's not without spending an obscene amount of money, you can't get more Zetas than me. You're not going to be able to accumulate more Zetas than me. Even if you started buying the episode pass, guess what? I buy it too. Like, it's not this simple thing that you can do to just, get more Zetas than Fat Phil. I'm already almost maxing out the amount of Zetas I can get sans, purchasing packs. So when you're free to play, you're like, well, I'm not even going to do that. So Phil's completely beating me, which is why I think on the older characters, you could reduce that cost. Now, the argument I would make here is that I would not go and just say, yep, we're going to do this for the characters. The day their shards go accelerated, their Zetas go accelerated. I think I would actually delay that Zeta reduction to 2 years. I'm going to wait for all of you to go in the comments and destroy me. But hear me out. Zetas are a bottleneck. And you don't want that bottleneck. And again, maybe back up a second here. The reason why you don't want to double the amount of Zetas given, right, or reduce costs, is because of people like myself and people like Egnards. If all of a sudden I don't have to worry about Zetas, which I'm never in a like, oh my god, I can't equip Zetas by the time that I really need them. But if all of a sudden I don't need to be worrying about Zetas, maybe I don't need to buy these anymore in the fleet, fleet shipments, right? I don't need to go buy them in the fleet store. That's shard shop currency for ships, which could offset gear or offset datacrons. And so it has this cascading effect where me not having to worry about Zetas opens up a lot of other doors. So you don't want that. And it's the same thing for the players who would be interacting with this. They don't want you to get to a point where you have more Zetas than you have needs for them, which could very realistically happen if you were free to play and trying to keep up. You would have so many Zetas to be able to spend that it would no longer become a big deal for you, and you'd just kind of speed through the game at a rate that it'd be insane. So I think by waiting 2 years, it still keeps that bottleneck in those characters that are still very relevant. And just to give you perspective on characters that were released like 2 years ago, today we are filming on August 11th, 2025. August 10th of 2023 was actually when Scout Trooper was released. So think now today, Scout Trooper Zeta would go from 20, would get cut in half. Which makes sense. Scout Trooper is still a very relevant character to this game in the debuffs that they apply in Conquest, the team that Scout Trooper can fit in. There's still a character that is sought after that still is valuable, that if you were like, hey, I just got Scout Trooper for my Dark Trooper Moff Gideon team, that's a solid pull, right? And again, at the end of August in 2023 is when we got Captain Drogon. Captain Drogon is still a part of the best Galactic Legend team at the time of recording in GL Leia. So, again, I think 2 years kind of makes a lot more sense in regard to the relevancy of characters. Again, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. I'm sure you all hate me for that, but I feel that's a pretty realistic approach. Again, that would not apply to Galactic Legends or Journey Guide Conquest units, but for your average character, I think that would be really good. And again, that would foster you to catch up to someone like me eventually, because if you're working on leveling up your Scout Troopers and your Captain Rexes and, you know, the characters that you would need for, you know, before we got Leia, we got the characters for Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. You're working on those characters, you're spending half as many Zetas, which means that Zetas that you can then use on newer things or other stuff, right? So just some food for thought there. Now, another thing we could do, going back to the people who spend money in the game, the Lightspeed tokens, which again, we talked about just how ridiculously priced these are, you know, and again, they don't include Zetas. For $15, you can get a Relic 5. What I think is these should include Zetas. For $15, include the Zeta. I think that would be perfect. You know, that could even be, instead of doing Lightspeed Bundle 2.0, just $15, you can get a Zeta like this. I don't think that would be a problem. I think that could be, you know, very valuable to the community. Again, like I said earlier, the cost of a Zeta, about $1 per mat, but because it's for a specific unit, all of a sudden it's worth a lot less, right? You know, if you think through this kind of logically, just for, you know, argument's sake, in an Imperial Remnant team, is Stormtrooper Zetas as important as Dark Trooper Moff Gideons? No. So I don't want to, you know, give him that Zeta instead of Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. So again, you know, the valuation of that, you could say, yeah, you know what, that would feel okay putting them inside of these Lightspeed tokens because, you know, it's maybe not for an extremely valuable character. It's not just 20 mats, right? So I think that could be a really good way to kind of help the players. Again, that would only be inside of these Kyber ones. I would not be giving them inside of like the Chromium or the Erodium or, you know, whatever other tiers there are. I would simply leave it at the Kyber one, includes the Zetas for, you know, and again, that $15 price point I feel would be fine for the Zeta and the Relic 5. Because again, I feel like they're already extremely overpriced. So, but you throw the Zeta in there, and I think you're looking at a much more reasonable purchase for the player base. Now, the final thing that I have, the final idea, is related specifically to Galactic Legends. And I'm going to pull up one of my channel members. We're going to pull up Wyatt Tincher's account here. Shout out Wyatt. So when we go and look at his account, we click on the Galactic Legends. He's got all the Zetas on JML, Jabba, Sith Eternal, and Kylo. But then Lord Vader only has 4 Zetas, and Galactic Legends Rey, not even geared, but doesn't have any of her Zetas. What I would do is, notice how he's got the ultimate for Lord Vader there, right? So he's missing 2 Zetas, but he has the ultimate for Lord Vader. What I would do in the Galactic Legend events is I would go in and I'd add a tier. After the ultimate, you add a tier. This tier is again going to be gated behind the Galactic Legend tokens at the same price as the ultimate tier, which is 70. You need 70 tokens for that. But instead of rewarding ultimate tokens, it rewards tokens towards that specific Galactic Legends Zetas. So for Lord Vader, Wyatt was missing 2 of the Zetas. What he would be able to do is go in and do this battle, right? Which again, I'm just going to do this battle because I can, right? So he would go in, be able to do this battle for, you know, Lord Vader, and earn Zetas along with it, right? So, hey, he's done it a few times, and he's going to make progress towards the Zetas that he needs for Lord Vader. And the same thing for Rey. Now, this is only after the ultimate has already been earned, so, like, I wouldn't just let you kind of do this for, like, kicks and giggles. It needs to be something that you've kind of, like, what's the phrasing I want to use here? This would need to be something that, hey, you've gotten the ultimate, because, how do I want to phrase this? I had a very specific way I wanted to phrase this. I think it still needs to be something that is challenging. I still think it needs to be something that it comes at a price to you, but is available for players that you could feel, hey, you know what? This is a way to help me catch up. What I would argue for right? Couple things. Number one, again, like I said, it has to be for that Galactic Legend. So Wyatt does enough of these battles, he earns the tokens towards getting a Zeta for Lord Vader. He can equip that Zeta. If for some reason he does this battle a few times and then equips Zetas to Lord Vader, it doesn't, he loses, he can't use them for anybody else, right? They just kind of disappear in his inventory. They need to be solely for the GL that you're doing the event for, and only available if your GL is missing Zetas. So mine has all 6 Zetas. That tier would just stay locked, or that there's no rewards given. What this would need to do, in my opinion, the amount of Zetas you would get from this event, the amount of times you'd need to do this in order to achieve the Zetas, you figure on Lord Vader, you do 12 ultimate battles at 70 tickets per piece. For the Zetas, again, very unpopularly, but I think realistically, you'd need to do this at about double that rate, meaning 24 battles for all 6 Zetas at 70 tickets per piece. My argument isn't because I think that's super easy. I understand that's a lot. The reason I said it there is because you want to make it expensive enough that someone like Egnards and myself aren't sitting there going, hey, for GL Hondo, we're only going to equip half of his Zetas, and then we're going to earn the rest of them in his Zeta event, right? We don't want to do that. Like, that's not what they want. That's not what their intention should be. It needs to be expensive enough to deter people like me from doing that, but available to those of you who do need it. Like someone like Wyatt, who's literally out of Zetas, right? He doesn't have the Zetas. So in my opinion, what you do is you give him, hey, you know what, man? We're going to give you the opportunity to earn the Zetas for Lord Vader, those 2 Zetas. Because you look, he's still missing some Zetas on his dark side clone troopers. So now, doesn't need to spend them on Lord Vader, can put those Zetas he's earning on his dark side clones because he's getting them through the Galactic Legend event. Similarly with Rey, if he's going through that Galactic Legend event and maybe he needs to equip a Zeta or 2 to her to get through her ultimate tiers, whatever that is, and then he can use those Zetas on characters like Ben Solo or Cal Kestis or Commander Tano while he's gearing up the Zetas he wants for Rey through her event. Again, I think this would be really good because you think right now there are 10 Galactic Legends that exist in the game. So even if you got 30 Zetas over the course of your time from playing these Galactic Legend events through those extra tiers, that's still 30 extra Zetas. That's a lot of Zetas. That's a good fair bit of Zetas that you've saved yourself over the years. So that's just the last way that I kind of thought about, where, again, targeted at helping the people who need it. You can't be trying to, you could say, oh, well, Phil, just make it that, you get like 10 Zeta mats, or whatever from those ultimate tiers. And it's like, well, the problem is you don't want it to be so expensive that, what's the wording I would use here? You don't want it to be accessible enough that Egnards and I are doing it and we're catching up on, getting even more Zetas than we need, right? You want to deter the people like me who have the Zetas, from going through it because of how expensive it would be. So that's kind of my logic there of why I chose that number. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, would you like any of these, or do you think that they're still ridiculous and I don't know what I'm talking about and I should just shut up and go die in a hole? Love to hear your guys' thoughts. Appreciate you all. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you next one. Cheers, my friends.